biggest challenge for most sports in the country is the lack of infrastructure and facilities to be. And possibly people might not be very happy with me saying this, but is making sporting facilities multi-sport. So right now what happens, if there's a facility for cricket, it is only used for cricket, even though it might be just used for a handful of days in a year. The rest of the days is just locked up and kept because no other sport is allowed to use it. And that's, I think, again, relating back to our previous answer, is let's look at the practices of the West and the other countries where one sporting facility is used for multiple sports. And that is, I think, a recipe for success. So open up facilities, let it be used 365 days a year, let other sports have a go at it as well. So that definitely would be, I think, one step closer to achieving our vision of being a sporting nation.
Hey listeners, he is called as the El Nino of the Indian Rugby. It's my honor and privilege to have the former India captain and current CEO of Rugby India, Nasser Hussain. Nasser, thank you for joining me on Inspire Someone today.
Thank you, Shrikant. It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. So Nasser, I'll start off with this very interesting fact of yours. Your first India cap was at the Asia Cup, and your dad was the captain of the Indian rugby team. In many ways, I feel the dream of playing for the country, the dream of playing in India colors runs in the family. So walk us through this. What is Nasir's backstory and how did this all happen?
Well, I was obviously come from a sporting family. Like you mentioned, dad was involved in rugby, and prior to that on multiple sports. I think he boxed back in school, and then obviously was exposed to other team sports, and then eventually took up to rugby. Yeah, while I was at school, I was obviously encouraged to partake in all sporting activities. I played football for my school, played a bit of cricket, and was part of the track and field teams and things like that. I first started playing rugby straight after my 10th standard final exam. I remember I finished the exam in the afternoon, and that evening itself, I was dragged to the training field. I wasn't very happy about it because, like everyone else, you had finished your ICSE exams and you wanted to do everything else besides get into a sort of a formal, structured sort of program.
Regime.
So I mean, that's how I got exposed to rugby at the age of 15. I played for my club, Bombay Gymkhana, and when I was just about 18 is when the first Indian team was meant to participate in the Asian Rugby Championship. And there were selections, and I was lucky enough to make the training camp and then eventually make the team. Yeah, it was very special. Obviously, first Indian team to represent the country, to wear the Indian jersey. Was double special because I was playing alongside my father, and who happened to be the captain on the team, and I was the youngest player. So that was a memory that I will cherish.
Absolutely. Couldn't have asked for that kind of a start, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was special on all counts.
Absolutely. So tell us about the experiences. One is you had such a wonderful start alongside with your dad. Then you went on to lead India as captain of the Indian rugby team. So what happens at the highest level, Nazir? Does it come with a lot of pressure, stress, fun? So walk us through the experience of at the highest level representing the country and like you said, wearing the Indian jersey.
I mean, every sort of outing donning the India colors is a memory and is special. Obviously, over the years, I grew older, got a bit more wiser, I would think, and eventually was looked at as somebody who could help lead the team. And I was pretty honored. I think in 2004 is when was the first time I was named captain. And I mean, there were a fair few senior players on that team, and it was good to have them there who'd help me through that journey as well. But yeah, I think what comes not just as a captain, but also just as a player representing your country, there's a lot of responsibility that comes along with it. And with that comes obviously pressure and sort of anxiety and the need to perform. Yeah, so a lot of emotions that an athlete needs to deal with, I think, representing the country. And this would be across all sports. Yeah, so that's, I think, something that it's hard to be prepared for something like that. It is something that you learn as you go along and you get better at it. And I think I did reasonably well, to be fair.
That's very modest of you. And did your education background in any which ways help you to play some of these roles, Nasir? And you had a very unique qualification also, right? So you went on to do your masters in sports management in London.
So through playing sport, I've had multiple opportunities, and I think that's the beauty of sport, that you get not only to see the world if you are traveling with teams, also experience different cultures, meet new people. And on one of these sort of tours, I had the opportunity of, our team was playing in the UK. We played a few clubs there, and there happened to be a few of the coaches around who were looking at potential players who could come play for their club. And I was approached, and I had the chance of going to play for a club in the UK in 2003. I played a couple of seasons, and while I was there, I was always passionate about sport and wanted to look at ways of furthering my career in sport, not just from a playing point of view. And that's when I started looking at universities in the UK that were offering degrees in sport, and this is all postgraduate master's degrees, and that's when I decided that I want to be doing sports management and pursue that sort of space. Mixed reactions, to be honest, in terms of my choice of career in terms of sport. Back in that time, sport wasn't looked upon as it is now. It wasn't looked at as a career option, especially from an academic point of view. So there were a lot of people who said, "Are you sure you want to be doing sports management? You could do an MBA, you could do XYZ." And I don't know, I just wanted to do something in sport. And I'm glad I took that leap into the sporting sort of academic front. And yeah, I did my master's in sports management in the northeast of England, actually, in Newcastle. And that's where I played for my club as well. And yeah, I think the experiences I've had in terms of both from a playing point of view as well as from the education and the academic side, it has definitely helped and aided to the years that followed, and also in my current role as CEO of Rugby.
No, wonderful. One of the pieces that I've kind of figured out with you is you're not afraid of breaking the barriers, be it taking a line of discipline that not many would signing up for your MBA in sports, or picking up a sport in a country like India where by default the number one sport that everybody thinks of is cricket, but you've chosen the different path of rugby. And we heard about you as a player, as a captain of what you have been able to kind of accomplish on the field. Off the field, you're doing something unique and something worthwhile for rugby to have its bigger presence in India. So walk us through the CEO Nasser Hussain and what's the goal and vision of rugby in India?
I'll start by saying that a lot of it is driven by passion, and I would encourage everyone to follow their dreams and passion and not give up on it. It's not going to be easy. There are a lot of people who are going to persuade you to do differently. But if you believe in what you want to do and you truly want to be doing that, definitely give it a shot. I'm grateful that I did, and my family and close friends supported me in doing that. It is, yeah, it is. There's no easy path. Every decision you make will have sort of challenges there that and obstacles that you need to overcome. With rugby in particular, it is not a very well-known sport. Even today, it's not the most popular. There's a lack of awareness. What we've done over the last 10, 15 years has tried to spread the game across the country. So currently, so back in the day when I played or started playing, there were a handful of clubs, predominantly Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta, Bangalore, Chennai were the centers that played. Today, we're proud to say that the sport is across 25 states, actively being played by men, women, boys and girls of various age groups. So that's a huge sort of shift from when I began the sport. Women's rugby, I think, is the biggest feather in our hat in terms of them being involved in a contact sport, especially in a country like India, and a contact team sport for that matter. they only began in 2009, so it's only about 12 years old in terms of women's rugby, and I think they've come a long way. It is, and I'd probably say this out loud, it's probably one of the fastest growing women's sports in the country, women's rugby. And of late now, you're hearing a lot about women's cricket and women's hockey, but women's rugby has been in the news from way longer. Individual athletes in the women's category have been obviously been there all along, but in terms of team sports for women, there hasn't been that much sort of opportunity provided to them, and that's changing now, and it's fantastic to see. But yeah, so the sports come a long way. There's loads happening in terms of grassroots programs. We're part of the School Games Federation of India for the under 14, under 17, under 19 age categories for both boys and girls. Part of the university games, part of the Kalo India University Games. So yeah, so I think we've kind of ticked most of the boxes in terms of ensuring that we have a wide reach, a strong foundation to build from. And I think now is the time where our focus is slightly shifting towards high performance teams and national representative players so that hopefully they can perform better on the international front.
Wonderful. So, as CEO, your focus is on expanding the reach, creating awareness, get it at the grassroots. And the early signs that you have had with the women's rugby team is nothing short of outstanding stuff. I happened to see the recent news article that the under 18 girls, I think they won the silver medal in the under 18 World Cup. Is that right?
Well, the Asian under 18 championship, under 18 Asian championship, yeah, the girls did exceptionally well. They were up against pretty high ranked teams, the likes of UAE and Kazakhstan, and we managed to beat Kazakhstan in the semi-final and lost very closely to UAE in the final. But yeah, I mean, it's I think it just shows that there is potential, there is talent, and hopefully, if we continue in this sort of direction, the future is pretty bright for the sport.
Excellent. So, Nazi, in the role that you are in, what gives you sleepless nights?
Well, I think I've had a lot of sleepless nights, and I don't see that changing in the near future. It's good sleepless nights at present, where it's anxiety of how the girls will play in tomorrow's games. I mean, the weekend of the under 18s. I think a lot of us, I mean, the staff and the board members, and I think a lot of the fraternity were very nervous as to how the girls would do, especially because we've not had much rugby in the last 18 months because of the pandemic. So we didn't know what to expect from these girls when they came into training camps. We didn't know how they would do because we're not aware of our playing abilities and what the opposition is going to look like because nobody's really played in the last 2 years. So I think things like that give us sleepless nights. And also, I think in terms of just there's so much potential and I'm sure this is with other sports as well. But unfortunately, the support that we require comes not so easily, if I may put it in a nice way. But yeah, it is. We're seeing a sort of a shift in trend within India, becoming more sporting, looking at other sports besides the most prominent ones. That's a positive we can take out of.
And again, for the benefit of all the listeners, if you were to kind of decipher the sport in layman terms, so the notion is that, okay, it is for very hugely built kind of a person. That's what we kind of get to see when we see the rugby teams outside of India. And from what I have picked up, this is a game where you kind of pass backwards but run forwards. So all of it kind of makes it a bit difficult to understand. So what would be your quick decipheration of, okay, this is how the game is?
I mean, you've rightly said that it is not an easy game to understand. A couple of formats of the sport. There's the 15-a-side format, which I would say is equivalent to Test cricket. And then you have the sevens format, which is like 2020. Sevens, rugby sevens is a sport that's played at the Olympics, Commonwealth Games, Asian Games, all multi-sport events. It's a much shorter, faster, exciting version of the sport. And it's much easier to understand. So if there was anybody who was keen to understand and follow rugby, I'd say watch rugby sevens first. It basically is 7 minutes and seven players on the field from each team. So each half is 7 minutes. So it's short, it's fast, it's exciting, and you won't get a massive sort of pile up like you would get in rugby 15s with 15 players on each side. Yeah, so it is a sport. I think what's different about rugby as compared to most sports is that you can only pass backwards, but you need to get to the other side and score. And that sort of law in itself ensures that it is a team sport. It's very difficult to be a superstar in rugby and be an individual and win games. So yeah, so that's I think what's unique. It takes a little to get the hang of it in terms of you can only pass forward, but pass backwards, but run forward. But yeah, once you get that, I think it makes things much easier to understand.
Wonderful. I think you have definitely kindled that interest. I'm hopeful that few out of the listeners will definitely go out and start playing the sevens, if not the 15s.
I hope so.
So, Nazir, we started off with your backstory to your stint with the Indian team. Now you're playing a role as the CEO of Rugby India. And I see quite a lot of parallels between what one gets to do on the corporate side to what's being done today at Rugby India. As an example, right, you feel that you have a product that is great for the market, but you don't know whether it will make it or not. So you kind of start off with a most viable concept and then translate it to a great product. And rugby is no different where we are today. Like I started off in my initial call out, is in a country where it's dominated by one sport, you're kind of trying to make a difference by bringing in rugby. So, what has been the thinking behind the scenes to make this a great product? How do you kind of think through saying, okay, this is where we are, this is what we need to be doing to get to the point that you want to?
I think you can draw a lot of parallels between growing a sport and in business, like trying to promote a product. And it will be the same. There will always be competition. I don't think there'll be any single product or sort of area that one would get into where nobody else is. So there's always going to be competition. There's always going to be people who want to establish in that space. And you're going to be up against those sort of challenges. The easiest thing to do is say, hey, it's not going to happen and just not do it. And that would probably be the worst thing to do as well. Coming back to rugby, what we as a board and as a federation looked at our strengths and our weaknesses and try to just focus on that. What are our strengths and how do we take that out into the market, so to say? And in terms of the strengths, what are the things that we can do to mitigate it in terms of making it less a weakness for us? So I think things are like, I think as a simple example would be the first thing when we would go to a school or to any sort of entity to start off rugby, they'd be like, oh, it's a contact sport, players are going to get hurt and get injured. And fair comment. I mean, we obviously struggled with that for a bit, and then we went back to the drawing board and like, what can we do to change that perception? And that's when we thought and we said, let's go out with non-contact rugby, which is touch rugby. And we went out to schools and we said, we're here from the Rugby Federation. We want to introduce this sport. First thing they said was, oh, we're worried about injuries. And we're like, it's non-contact rugby. Looking at touch rugby, the risk of injury is as close to zero because there's no contact element in it. But it still follows every single aspect of the sport in terms of passing backwards, moving forward, teamwork, everything else would be the same, except we pulled out the contact element out of it. I mean, it was an easy sell and for them to accept it. And what happened was that was a great sort of inroad to get our grassroots program going. And what happened is after sort of period of time of running this, it was the kids, and especially in this day and age where you have so much access to the internet and to information, that they went in and started Googling and looking at YouTubes and things like that. Like, oh, what we play is not the same as this. Can we do a tackle? Can we do a scrum? Can we do a line out? And it was the kids that came back to us saying that we want to be playing this version of rugby now. And it was easy for us to then progress from non-contact to contact. And I mean, to be fair, when I started playing, we started with non-contact rugby as well. So I think our approach in the start was probably wrong, where we tried to go straight with contact rugby. But the gradual progression was start off, get them to like the game, and then they will want to pursue it and advance forward. So it was things like that, little sort of tweaks and changes that I think made the biggest difference.
Wonderful. In itself, there is a great lesson of change management. Is don't force the change, just go with what you have and then get people to kind of accept it, embrace it for you to kind of move on to the next leg of the change. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's I think it's all about thinking out of the box, and that would be, like I said, in any field that you are in, be it business or sport or profession that you're after. If you just think outside the box, there are ways, there are ideas which will get you to that outcome that you want.
And one other piece that drew my attention was this audacious goal that Rugby India has in terms of LA 2028, where you want Rugby India to make a mark there. My question there on is the importance of long-term goal setting. How do you go about drawing milestones? What do you kind of call out as short-term destinations to long-term destinations?
It's important to have goals and sort of have a vision, and it's important to have both short term as well as long term sort of goals and milestones. In terms of vision for LA 2028, it is to qualify to that Olympics or come as close to qualifying to that Olympics. And I think if we don't set ourselves a target, we're never going to get there or never even going to get half the way to there. I think that's important, again, from any sort of aspect you look at, be it growing the game or sort of training and education or from a high performance point of view. In terms of the long term vision is, yes, 2028 Olympics. And then we've kind of charted out various milestones on the road to LA 2028. We've got the Asian Games, we've got the Asian Championships, we've got Commonwealth Games, you've got qualifiers. So all of those every single year with one or two of them is what we've sort of earmarked as benchmarks where we can assess our sort of progress. And if we meet those sort of targets that we put out for ourselves, we're well on our way to qualifying or to getting close to qualifying for the ultimate event.
Okay, so we are traversing the path of the connect between corporate and sports. Couple of things where we touched upon was taking a minimum viable concept to a great product, talking about the long-term goal settings, how do you chunk it down to milestones, course corrections, things like that. One other piece that comes to the mind, Nasir, while we do this, and you are the best person to kind of respond to this, is what kind of training or mindset change one would need to have when we are playing multiple roles. You have been an administrator now, you've been a captain, so you have played kind of multiple roles. Do you train yourself to think, act differently when you are wearing these multiple hats?
A lot of it, as time goes on, you gain that sort of experience. But yeah, I mean, right at the start, it's trying to do the best you can in that given sort of role. I think what now the challenge sort of I would face is to wear the right hat in terms of what you're doing, because the times where you find yourself as a player, you find as an official or as an administrator or someone sort of governing the sport. So yeah, there are multiple hats that you need to juggle and wear the right one at the given moment. Also, I think what's important is to be able to make decisions which you think in the interest of the situation, and obviously correct decisions would obviously be the best thing to do. But yeah, I mean, one learns a lot from the stuff that you've done, and you hopefully don't make those same mistakes again. And yeah, I mean, I like to say failure is a stepping stone to success. Yeah, you learn from what mistakes you've made unknowingly, hopefully, and don't repeat them again.
And that's an excellent call out. Get to know wear the right hat, don't make the same mistakes twice, and learn from past experiences. And talking about experiences, Nazir, how open are sports to share lessons learned, share experiences from other sports? For example, while you're trying to establish rugby in a big way in India, there has been successful leagues like the Pro Kabaddi League, the Volleyball League, or even the Cricket League. Are there platforms, instances where you go out and say, okay, what can we learn from each other? And the reason I ask is I can draw parallel stories in the corporate world, right? We tend to kind of boil the ocean, reinvent the wheel, but there might be a solution happening in the next team, in the next building, things like that. So, what can you share from that perspective?
I think it's very, very important. And to be honest, I don't think it happens too frequently or as much as it should. It is important to learn from each other, to share experiences, to share best practices. Because, I mean, at least in a similar sort of environment that you're in, we're all in the same boat. And it's just a case of one boat's way ahead and one's eventually going to get there at some stage or the other. But the one that's gone way ahead has been through the challenges that you are currently facing, or you've been through things with someone who's behind you or who's trying to make it up there is facing. Yeah, I think it's important to learn from each other, to share the sort of obstacles that you've had and the solutions that you've come up to in terms of overcoming that. And it's like I said, it's I think a path not taken too often, and it should. I mean, I think if we are truly want to become a global sporting sort of nation, I think that's something that we would need to do. And I'm not necessarily look within India. Look at what an Australia is doing. Look at what a UK is doing, and try and replicate those in the Indian context. Obviously, we need to. It needs to be needs driven, and we can't just take a model or a practice that's being done somewhere else and try and do exactly the same thing from A to Z. You would have to adapt it. You'd have to make it suited to your needs. But so yes, I think those are things which are key to success, and it should happen more. And again, all of this is across every spectrum. It's not just specific to sport.
So, we'll start off the power of three round. Three players to watch out in the Indian rugby scene.
In the women, it would be Wabi's, Sweetie Kumari, and Aarti Kumari, who's just been a part of the under 18 girls. In the men, the likes of Prince, Neeraj, and possibly a Rajdeep from Bengal.
Wonderful. If Nasir were to be a sports minister, three things that he would change.
There'll be a lot of things that change. No disrespect to the sports ministers. They all mean well. In terms of things that I would look at changing would be, I think, standardizing the support that's being provided. We're always on this. I mean, it's not going to be a rapid answer. This one's going to be a bit of an explanation. We're always a sort of a back and forth with the authorities in terms of what comes first. Do you support a program and then you achieve medals, or only when you have medals will you support a program? And that's the sort of ongoing sort of uphill battle that we're having, that they say if you are a medal hopeful and if you are in so and so category, you will be eligible for support. But if you don't support anybody to get there, you're never going to get there. So I think something like that, where let's meet midway, is what I would look at. It's not neither here nor there. Let's look at, I mean, there are multiple sports in the country that we're a massive nation. There's definitely ways where we can win medals in various other sports if they were given the right sort of support. So look at hopefully amending that infrastructure support. I think the biggest challenge for most sports in the country is the lack of infrastructure and facilities to be, and possibly people might not be very happy with me saying this, but is making sporting facilities multi-sport. So right now what happens, if there's a facility for cricket, it is only used for cricket, even though it might be just used for a handful of days in a year. The rest of the days is just locked up and kept because no other sport is allowed to use it. And that's, I think, again, relating back to our previous answer, is let's look at the practices of the West and the other countries where one sporting facility is used for multiple sports, and that is, I think, a recipe for success. So open up facilities, let it be used 365 days a year, let other sports have a go at it as well. So that definitely would be, I think, one step closer to achieving our vision of being a sporting nation. And again, in terms of support, help out other sports. I think work with them as opposed to putting them all aside in an others category. Let's build them and help them to move up to a priority or a more sort of a progressive category where they will be able to perform.
And that's a wonderful call out. Everybody wins together.
We can't win without them, and they can't win without us. So it's let's meet midway and let's see how best we all can win together.
Absolutely. The next question on the power of three round, Nazir. If Nazir were to have three things on his bucket list, what would those three things be?
I've actually ticked off a few of them already. Three things that would be probably pending. The big ones would be ticked off. Skydiving's done, which was pretty exciting.
If you had the chance to invite anybody, I mean anybody in the world, to have dinner with you, who are those three individuals you would like to have dinner with?
Wow. I think Justin Trudeau. Yeah, he's I think pretty exceptional. I think in the way he's functioning. So yeah, he would be one. Would be Johnny Wilkinson. So someone from my sport, and yeah, I mean have had a fantastic sort of playing career, and maybe the sports minister now that is a new one. It'll be good to have the chat and maybe mention the three things in person to him, Mr. Thakur here, if you're listening.
Or if you plan to listen in the future?
Yes.
Well, this is the last of the power of three round. This is three things that people do not know about Nasir.
A lot of people probably wouldn't know. I mean, I'm pretty shy introvert. Don't really like being in public gatherings or being on stage, and it's quite ironic because my role requires me to be doing all of that. So yeah, so that's something possibly people would not be aware of. I'm probably more fun than people think. A lot of people, especially the players and all, think I'm very serious, and a lot of them probably are a little sort of would think twice before coming and speaking to me, but encourage them that I am approachable and I wouldn't bite.
Okay, that was the power of three round. Well played, Nasser Hussain. Thank you so much for being a sport.
Thank you.
So moving on, if I were to ask to give me a pie chart of the day in the life of the Rugby India CEO, how would the pie chart look like?
Well, nowadays my day begins with my little one, who's just over a year. Yeah, he's the one who wakes me up. He's my alarm clock now. So yeah, so the morning bits is with him. Obviously, your one. I'm still half sleepy, but he's full of energy and wants to be playing and doing things. So yeah, that is that's what how it starts. And I mean, obviously there's a to do list always, which one needs to. It's a never ending to do list, which you tick things off and things keep getting added on as well. So yeah, so as you get off the top, the bottom gets filled, or double the amount gets filled at the bottom. So yeah, it's the course of the day would be to try and do as much from that to do list and make sure not a lot gets added onto it. So the next day is a bit easier. Yeah, I mean it's that it's I mean especially now in this in the current scenario, multiple Zoom calls. I think there's been good and bad out of it in terms of the goods being where I think we've realized that we can work remotely. It makes things much easier. We don't need to be traveling, wasting time, money, and things like that. We could get the job done with just a Zoom call. So that's I think a positive out of it. A not so positive is to try and be able to maintain a work life balance. What's happened is because it's just a Zoom call, a link sent, oh, there's a call at 10 o'clock at night. And it's, that's something I guess over a period of time we will try and manage. And I'm sure a lot of the listeners listening would probably relate to things that is at present. That is the need of the hour, but I hope we can get back to sort of working hours, even with this hybrid way of working online and offline. So yes, I think those are a couple of things that pretty much and one doesn't realize. I think 24 hours is not enough in a day. Yeah, we definitely need more. So yeah, so that and I mean the evening I try and as much as possible spend with family, try and get some sort of Netflix or something or the other or a movie, which tends to keep you up till fairly late at night. So yeah, so that's how the day sort of ends.
Super. You gave us a recipe for how to work hard and also have things to unwind so that you kind of come back rejuvenated the next day.
Yeah, and somewhere in the middle is try and get some exercise in. It's been a challenge, to be fair. Probably, if I'm honest to myself, being lazy is the excuse, and everything else. I mean, we need to take our time for it, and I think I need to take our time for it as well. I haven't in the last 12 months, and that needs to change certainly.
And in the role that you are in, Nazir, how do you prepare yourself for the trends to watch out? Like you said, it's not been an easy last 18 months. There are a lot happening. So how do you kind of prepare yourself for those kind of changes coming, maybe for the rugby world, maybe for your organization? Help us walk through this particular piece.
I think it's not just an individual that would be able to. It has to be a collective effort in terms of being or having that foresight and being prepared. Yeah, I think we're pretty lucky to have the board and a group of directors who are very passionate, who are hands on everything that's happening, and they're the ones who actually guide and help drive things in the right direction. But yeah, it is. It's about being flexible, being able to adapt. I think those are important sort of characteristics to have within an organization as opposed to being very rigid and sort of firm in the way it functions. So yeah, I think the organizations that were quick to adapt to the pandemic are the ones that have actually managed to grow. I mean, a simple example was being able to work remotely, do things online as opposed to having people coming physically into office and that's the only way of working. So yeah, I think it's about that and being aware of what with the ear on the ground in terms of what's happening in sporting circles across various sports. I think it's important to have that sort of year out for what's going on.
And more so, what is relevant is you have had all your plans, everything is kind of taking off, and then the pandemic arrived. You had to change all of your plans, and the future seems more or less the same. You got to kind of embrace yourself for the changes that you don't anticipate. Given those kind of situations, how do you plan to manage these curveballs?
It's hard. It hasn't been easy, and I'll be surprised if anyone says they took it easily and was a smooth sort of transition. I mean, I think the biggest challenge that we faced is pre-pandemic. We were at the peak of our sort of participation programs. We had reached out to close to 215,000, 215,000 participants. We were number one in the world in terms of participation reach, as per the World Rugby survey. And then we were hit by the pandemic. And now 18 months down, 2 years down the line, we don't know if all of those participants are still even engaged with the game. So for us, it would be to start all over again, reaching out to them to try and re-energize, get them excited about the sport again to start off. So that was one aspect of it. The other was besides this sort of participation reach, we had a lot of teams that were actively playing rugby and now suddenly they were not anymore. And we had to think of ways of how do we keep them engaged. And all of them wanted to be playing the sport again and they wanted competition. And what the team and I think very uniquely designed was an online competition where that kind of kept them excited. I mean, wasn't the real deal, but there was still competition, and they were playing against other teams who they knew. but it wasn't real a match, but it was an online voting, and they were calling people and getting them to vote and family, and that went on for like about a couple of weeks. So that was one way of keeping them excited and keeping it relevant to them. But yeah, I mean, there's no substitute for actual play and actual competition. And I mean, we're pretty pleased that we're slowly getting back into it. Our return to play programs have begun. We're hopefully looking at our national level competitions in December. So yeah, I mean, obviously COVID notwithstanding, but yeah, I mean, we're planning. And in the middle, there was a case of planning and then replanning because the restrictions were extended, lockdowns were lifted and then reimposed. So yeah, so it's, I mean, that is how it is, and there's no running away from it. We need to do what needs to be done.
Absolutely. So Nazir, I don't know how time elapsed. We are at the end of the conversation. Couldn't have asked for more insights than coming from somebody who has donned the national colors and sharing his experiences. Thank you so much for taking time and sharing your perspectives with us. Before closing, if there is an ask from all of my listeners, I would like to hear what that ask is. And if there's a message along with the ask, the message is this show is all about creating ripples of inspiration. What is that Inspire Someone Today message to all the listeners?
To all the listeners, I mean, I'd just say that follow your dreams, your passion. It's not going to be an easy journey, but it will definitely be satisfying. And I can vouch for that myself. Give it your best shot so that when tomorrow, when you look back, you don't have regrets that, hey, I didn't try that. I think that's my message to all the listeners.
And any ask from the listeners, Nazir?
I think give rugby a go, not just from a playing point of view. Watch it. It's exciting. It's fun. I'm sure you will enjoy it and you will be hooked.
Give rugby a go and you will be hooked. On that note, signing off from Inspire Someone Today. Thank you, Nazir, so much for taking time and sharing your insights with us.
Thank you, Shrikant. Pleasure.
Thank you for listening into today's edition of Inspire Someone Today. It's been a privilege to bring in these conversations. If you like this episode and have any feedback or comments, do mail me at inspiresomeonetodaypodcast@gmail.com. Inspiring someone is like creating ripples around us. If you like what you listen, feel free to share them and let's create ripples of inspiration. Do not forget to follow me on my Instagram handle @InspireSomeoneTodayPodcast for all the latest updates. This is Shrikant, your host, signing off, and until next time, keep inspiring.